Hey, happy to be with you all. In this video, I'm going to talk about the effects of meditation, but more importantly, how can we potentiate exponentially this effect of meditation? So I'm going to first talk about meditation and the effects that it has, and then how the inner path truly exponentially increases this capacity. You've heard the word or the phrase service to others. That's precisely where I want to get to. So the first thing that I want to show you or talk about is the brain. We know that the brain has an effect when we enter the state of meditation and do it for prolonged periods of time, months. And there are two key things in the brain, and I'm not a neurologist, so I'm not going to go into details, or not that I could, but the default mode network and the task positive network are two things that are very important for us to know what's happening in the brain and what they really mean in our experience. Yes? So the default mode network is that part of the brain that is active when we have self-referential thoughts. Thoughts about me, myself, I. Okay? That's going to be important here. When meditation is practiced for periods of time, right? For longer periods of time, it's just not one day. But the more and more we practice meditation, this self-referential thought or thoughts, because it's constantly that we're having these thoughts, they start to diminish. And then another part of the brain, which is the TPN or task positive network, begins to be more active. So it's almost like they're moving an activity. One decreases and the other one increases. And this one is related to the best way I can describe it in just a couple of words is those thoughts that are actively seeking solution, bringing some sort of contribution to our thought processes and things that we want to do, inspirational thoughts and so on. So you can see the difference here already in what kind of thoughts are being activated when we engage in meditation. Okay, we can go further into explaining what else happens here, but these are the two sides that I want you to just realize for now. This is something that has been reported and studied and seen obviously in the experience of anybody who meditates for a long time. We begin to see that our thoughts begin to shift and change. However, it's just not meditating, but how can we, and again, this is obviously something that if the rest of the world could do, then we would have a totally different system in how we relate to each other. But it doesn't stop there. And this is where the inner path or the mystical path can potentiate this effect to tremendous and just beautiful degrees of personality. And that's where I want to bring this explanation to your purpose, your mission, or your particular service to others. So how does this happen? Now, you know my pillars in my method, which are know yourself, know that which you're not, which brings you to meditation or effortless meditation, healing or liberation, and then finding your true service. Okay? You're going to see at least 3 of them here, and there's one that I have taken away or that I haven't placed yet, because that's the one that I want to relate with the DMN, and that is the ego. Okay? So this ego is basically a product of constant activity of the default mode network. That's what we relate it to. And so because this is happening all the time, when we meditate, this diminishes. But if we haven't really identified what we are or who we are, then the ego can easily come back online, even if we have been meditating for 20, 30 years. This is the reason why a lot of people who have been on a spiritual path can spend decades without really finding that true peace that they're looking for, because they haven't really identified who they truly are. That's why I have down here, it's all about identity. It has nothing to do with meditation, really. It has to do with identity. The moment we identify who we are, then meditation can get empowered by this. So I want to show you how that works. Because we haven't identified what truly the ego is, we're still confused about our identity, then we have to go into, my first pillar, know yourself. That's the first step that we need to take. If we know ourselves and we dive into this deeper sense of being that we are, then we can recognize that which we are not. You see, meditation begins to acknowledge the default mode network as something that is not real, or what the default mode network is saying, that self-referential thought, something that is not real, not tangible. It's an illusory self that is being projected and strengthened over time by the tendency of the mind to identify with the thought processes. We just see them as, that's not what I am. You see? But you can only do that if you know yourself. So the first thing that we need to do to truly empower meditation is to know who we are. That's why in my method, I always say, know yourself so you can know what you're not. This DMN will be decreased tremendously because it doesn't come back online again when we are in our awakened state, and reduces only in the meditative state. So what happens here? We take control, so to speak, with what we call healing or liberation. You can only let go of those things that you know don't belong to you. And so if in your mind there are thought patterns that you still identify with subconsciously, and you're still holding on to them without even knowing it, then you're going to continue to be in the state of suffering or disquietness, I would say. So healing and liberation can only happen through the meditative state. Doesn't have to be meditation, formal meditation, but the meditative state of realizing and abiding in your true self. When this happens, then we are allowing the natural process of healing to happen, and that is what we call liberation. This has a profound effect in the task positive network, or simply the space of service. Because remember, this part of the brain is allowing us to find solutions, to have inspirational thoughts, to have creative impulses that happen naturally. We're not seeking it because this is not part of the equation. It is not the doing, but rather the happening that is occurring. So when we allow all of this to happen, then this creates the space. This space creation begins to elicit this kind of thoughts that, again, we are not taking credit for, we're not doing or fabricating, but rather they are happening, right? That's the report that we get here when meditation is deepened and less default mode network or ego activity is happening, then this is what opens up. The more this opens up, then the more we can actually allow this purpose, this service to others that we are seeking to happen. And the beautiful thing is that you are not in charge of it. It's already happening through you. And so the report is that people say that it's something that feels natural, spontaneous, and it also feels like the most intimate and known thing to us. We say, that's what I have always been. You begin to recognize that because it's almost like you are unwrapping again that which has been wrapped around an ego. So you can see how not just meditation obviously shows this effect, but how we can potentiate it and actually unleash and cause this capacity that we have for service. But again, it's all about identity. We can spend decades meditating, thousands of hours of meditation. It's going to have an effect. But even the most subtle identity still with the thinking mind will produce an ego, and that ego is going to take over and, of course, take credit for anything that's happening or blame for what's happening. So truly differentiating yourself from that which you're not is what's going to unleash this natural process which we call liberation, and it's just a joyful, peaceful living, doing what you love. Finding your true service is doing what you love without having to have the implications of the ego always sabotaging or saying we shouldn't be doing this. So I wanted to explain this as the way in which knowing yourself, which is the perennial philosophy and suggestion by all mystics, if we know ourselves, everything else becomes effortless. Recognizing the ego, meditation as an activity, if you will, liberation happens effortlessly, and your service to others reveals itself. It's not something that you have to seek. You don't have to do anything for that. Just allow it. A simple allowance of being is what we say. Be who you are. That's all I wanted to share in this video. I hope it's helpful. And if you have any questions, or if you want to know more about how you can know yourself through my method, always check the description for more information. I'll see you in the next video.